Someone once said that life is hard even under the best of circumstances. However, life circumstances are not always the best. There's so many things wrong with the society lived in today. Day after day, tragedies are flashed upon the screen of the television, heard flowing from the mouths of people. Life is definitely no walk in the park. Even more so when an addiction is in the picture, along with all this clutter that already consumes your worries and thoughts. An addiction is a monster, destroying everything that is in its path and damaging for life. Drugs in particular are the ones most damaging. Their term drugs doesn't just range from your typical marijuana to heroin or even methamphetamine, but also includes the consumption of alcohol. Every single one of them damages. It damages physically, it damages financially, it damages emotionally. All of these negative effects are obviously only inflicted on the consumer of them, correct? Wrong. These addictions are like an epidemic, spreading like wildfire to the people around. Ever since I could remember, my father has struggled with an addiction to alcohol. People say you cannot recall events that have occurred when you were young, about 3 or 4. I do. Yes, they're a little fuzzy, but I still remember. I remember seeing my mom have to hide the beer from my father, afraid that once he got home from work, he would consume them and end up on the couch, so intoxicated that functioning was impossible. As the apple juice-looking liquid flowed out of the silver container and down the drain, I remember thinking how such a harmless-looking substance could turn my dad into a stranger. And stranger he was. My caring, loving, funny, sociable dad was gone when he was drunk. I always heard family members say, "What a shame that he drinks. He's such a good person when he's sober." I didn't ever think less of him because of it, but apparently others did, and it pained me to know that. That idea never shifted as I began to get older, but I began to see why people said this, and I started to feel ashamed when he was drunk in public. Family gatherings were not as fun as they should have been, and we usually had to leave early or stay away from the certain party settings that involved alcohol. These issues followed us home as my older sister, who was a teenager at the time, could not bring friends over, for my father's behavior when drunk ranged from not being able to function to becoming belligerent and loud. The thoughts of why couldn't he be a normal dad like my friends' fathers and everyone else I knew came to mind every single moment. So young, yet already so broken. TV shows depict the ideal family, the hardworking father who provides for his loved ones, the stay-at-home mom that takes care of her children and is responsible for the household duties. The children who, as soon as they run into the house, they run to kiss their mom and say hi to their pops. The family dinners where everyone sits laughing at sharing moments that will be forever engraved in their hearts. I longed for this, and it never came. My father worked, but as most addicts do, they get their paycheck and spend it on the substance that is tearing the family silently. This led to my mother getting 2 jobs in order to support her beloved children. I was left with my older brother and sister, left to try to figure it out by ourselves. Circumstances didn't get easier. The saying goes that things usually get worse before they get better, and that it did. Domestic violence calls were made late into the night because this addiction had such a stronghold on my dad that being drastically impaired made him lose focus on what mattered at hand, his wife and his kids. Why? Why me? Why us? Questions ran through my head, and the fear that this would never change grappled with me. There finally came a time where enough was enough. The line that had a warning not to cross it was crossed. My parents got a divorce. I was 9 at the time, and although I knew it was the right thing to do, my heart was aching for an ideal family. I knew I would never achieve that. To make matters worse, I would not have a daddy like the rest of my friends did. All of that was important to me then, as most kids have a yearning for. Although it was the end of my parents' marriage, it did not end my dad's addiction. It continued on, and more pain developed. Seeing him on the streets instead of at my honor ceremonies. Seeing him not care when all I wanted was an embrace and a support. Feeling as though I had been traded in for a glass that held pure destruction. I felt rejected and lonely. This is what alcoholism does. This is what an addiction does. It not only affects the consumer, but is like a spider web, branching out to the surrounding people and entangling them with its deadly strength. No one is born an addict. Free will is given to us when we slip out of our mother's womb and enter this cold world. What one does with this freedom of choices is entirely up to us. I asked my dad when he had gone through rehab recently, how it all started, how he came to be the person he was. He answered me by telling me, "It all started when I was 16, and I got a car and I was given freedom. I had no rules at home because I was the boy of the family, and that's when all hell broke loose. My uncles thought it was cool to give me a beer, and I gladly took it, thinking it would make me a man. All of these choices eventually added up, and now look where it got me." He decided to take those first drinks, and that ignited his passageway to addiction. It is too often seen that kids our age find it amusing to drink. Drinks are offered everywhere, and although the legal age to consume an alcoholic beverage is 21, it does not hinder the adolescent from getting it. Many families allow kids to drink as long as they are home with relatives, but little do they know that it is a start for an addiction to grow. Everything has a starting point, and despite the matter of taking one tiny sip from the glass may seem frivolous to the young mind, it is important to be aware that one little sip can decide the rest of our life. Many people state, "I need a drink," after a long and stressful day. But if they give in due time, they find themselves drinking more when they are stressed, exhausted, or angry. Nowadays, the average person experiences stress on a daily basis, so people who have a drink when they are under pressure can become addicted. The body sends signals to the brain and the brain back to the body that it needs alcohol in order to deal with a certain emotion. This is why it is estimated that there are 140 million alcoholics, some of which suffer from several diseases: infection of the pancreas, liver cirrhosis, sleeping disorders, sexual problems, premature dementia, hepatitis, heart attacks, and strokes, just to name a few. Alcoholism addiction is no laughing matter. Having to see my father endure this still goes on today, but I've learned to cope with it, to not be daunted by it, and to see the positive outlooks on life. While I was sitting at my desk debating with myself to write this or not, I asked myself, how many people aren't dealing with something related to this? So much can be covered up with a smile and the phrases, "everything's good," that sometimes it is not realized that the problem someone may have. You can't help everyone, but sharing a piece of yourself can encourage someone to let them know they are not alone. You can't convince them to put the substance down if they are an addict. They have to want to do that. It may take time and responsibility, but during this duration of time, keeping the chin held high is key. There's sometimes this weird benefit of having an addict as a parent. It motivates in which you don't want to be like them, but help others that may be struggling with it. Always remember this: life is hard even under the best of circumstances, but it's up to you to face your challenges and determine what road you go down.